Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Washington County Bible Church. I had one RSVP from Kansas City. Has anybody from Kansas City show up? And it's a complicated process if you RSVP. You know you have to put in your name first and last and your email. So.
Well, it might be that they're still on their way.
I was going to say. Maybe they hit a headwind or something.
Right.
So, well, if somebody walks in with the parka on, we'll know they came down from the north.
Yeah.
Well, welcome to Washington County Bible Church. I'm Pastor John Paulson, and we are a Bible church for a reason. It is because we understand the Bible is the inspired Word of God. And that's how we hold it, that's how we relate to it, that's how we live it out. The inspired Word of God. It's called the Holy Word, which means it's unlike anything other. It's actually not even of this earth. It is separate. It is without error in its original writings. It is the revelation of God and man and our sin condition and God's remedy for our sin, Jesus Christ. And it is authoritative over all matters of life and death and matters of eternal life and eternal death. It is God's source of absolute and divine truth. And we hold all these things as the very foundation of our faith. And it is the source by which we check and measure and evaluate every other spiritual claim. So when we say we're a Bible church, it's because we're recognizing this is God's work and He's invited us into a relationship with Him. But His Bible is how we know Him and the things of Him. So those are just some of the reasons we are a Bible church. According to God's revelation, we preach salvation by faith alone, in Jesus Christ alone, by God's grace alone. We preach Jesus Christ alone because Jesus is a sinless Son of God, incarnate in human flesh, both God and man. He died on the cross for our sins. He rose from the dead and defeated sin and death. And it is by faith that we receive what He offers. When you believe in Him. And we say by God's grace alone because Jesus' atonement for sin was sufficient, complete, absolute. There's no law that we keep, no work that we do, no sacrifice that we make in addition to the sacrifice God provided. Our salvation's been secured in Jesus Christ. It is up to us to put our faith in Him to be saved, to receive what God has given. So those are just a few of the details of the greatest love story you will ever hear. But on the day that I met this woman, Lisa, and now she's Lisa Paulson, and I learned there of love stories that are being written in our midst where people have dementia. And we see both the faithfulness of God and love stories that are just, you don't hear about them, but they are so magnificent in their power and scope. I had little to compare to how to love someone with dementia, except that I have a special needs daughter. And her condition was so severe that I came to understand that the love of Christ was much like my love of my daughter. I loved my daughter. I had to learn to love my daughter without expecting to receive anything back. It was love for the sake of love. It was love that you loved, that knowing that you were loving that way was its own reward. And that is how Jesus Christ loves us. And so if you are dealing with dementia in any way, shape, or form, just know that you're going to learn to love much like Christ has loved you and is loving you. So again, dementia is a terrible, tragic disease, but it is also the place where you will come to learn to love in a way that you probably never knew how to love before. And if you'll look to the Bible and you look to God and you look to Jesus Christ, you'll learn how to love this way. It's mapped out for us. It's made known. So it is my good pleasure to introduce to you Lisa Paulson. I didn't let her get away. And she will be presenting today, I'll Love You Forever, the P's and Q's of Dementia. Again, testimony of God's love, power, and faithfulness. She is a believer in Jesus Christ. She's my God gift wife. My church and I prayed that God would reveal his choice for a wife for me, and it was her. Mother, grandmother, sister. She mentors many women and girls. She's a great prayer warrior. In fact, she was the housing assistant director at the seminary housing, so she is mentoring even now to young women and their daughters in many nations around the world. So God just opened some of these fantastic doors. But she's also my friend and a friend to many. She is going to speak now with godly authority on why we do life, death, and dementia through faith in Jesus Christ. Lisa Paulson.
Well, it's a good thing I brought a Kleenex because he already made me cry. So, anyway, that is a very wonderful introduction. Thank you. John and I, as he said, we met at the nursing home where I was working. It was a 45-bed nursing home. I was working there for 9 years. So over that time, I probably worked with, between that and then doing some in-home care, I've worked with over 100 dementia loved ones. God's love is so big, and he puts people in our lives that we can pass that love on to. And that's what I'm going to be teaching you today, is how to love your loved one, no matter what the state, no matter what stage of dementia they are in. Said, what we are going to do is we are going to go and do everything there is to do. And we are going to become part of this small community. And one of those things that we did was we went to a nursing home, which I had never stepped foot into a nursing home. And I had my 4-year-old daughter with me. And I walked in the door, and there were wheelchairs, a woman with a trach, and I kind of paused, and I took my daughter back outside, and I said, oh, I haven't told you what we're going to see when we get inside. And I started to explain, you know, moms always have to have these big explanations. And she goes, Mom, they're just grandmas and grandpas. And I thought, you know, out of the mouth of babes has such wisdom. And I didn't grow up with grandmas and grandpas. And so each one of these beautiful people, I love them forever. I will love them forever. And that's why we have the name of our I'll Love You Forever. And then the other reason is I started thinking about when else do we say that? When else do we have that overwhelming love for someone? What were your first thoughts when you held your baby in your arms for the very first time? What was your first thought? I'll love you forever. And that's what God does for us. He loves us forever. He knew us before we were born. He saw us before we were before there was even one day of our life. He knew us. And he will know us until we go to meet him in heaven for all eternity. Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully. Now that hopefully, you'll remember that word, hopefully.
You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in from behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me, and your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will be shine like the day, and the darkness as the light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. You saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be.
When you think about the loved one that either has dementia or that you're caring for with dementia, or even possibly yourself, if you see signs or you're wondering, is that in my future? God already knows that. God already knows, and He is with you, and He is there for you. And He will bring people around you to care for you and to love you. And as you looked at your little one, when they were first handed to you, or when you first saw them for the very first time, you had no idea what the future would hold. They were colicky, they were cranky, they made huge messes, but I love you anyway. I will love you forever. I love you forever. And that's the same way with this new road of dementia. We don't know what is ahead. There might be messes, there might be outbursts of anger, tantrums, whatever, but I'll love you forever. I'll love you through it. And as that scripture said, even when the darkness comes, God is still there. And there will be dark days. It is not an easy thing, but neither is any other diagnosis that we get, MS or cancer or the loss of a child. We don't know what the future holds, but we can trust the one who does know, Jesus Christ. So in my demonstration and in my talk, this little book, this is a book that I used at the nursing home on a Mother's Day. I took the book and the residents acted it out. We did a play. It's very dear to me. It's very special to me. But it talks about all the stages of Alzheimer's. This is what this is about, is Alzheimer's. There's 7 stages of the progression of Alzheimer's. There's 7 stages of childhood development. And the interesting thing is that as a child grows and develops in one direction, dementia starts to diminish in the same way of the development. So there's development and regression. And so it's pretty fascinating. So that's what we will be using as just kind of a guideline to get started with. And this is written by Robert Munch and illustrated by Sheila McGraw. And I tried to make the font as large as I could. There'll be some slides that it's too tiny probably for you to read, but I will kind of compensate for that, hopefully. So this is the picture. I'll love you forever. This is the mother holding her son, the son holding his mother. And the poem that gets written or read through all these different stages is, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be. And that's through all the terrible 2s, the ferocious 4s, the thunderous teens, all of that. And the same. The very last slide says, I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. I'll love you forever. As long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be. And I'll read that again, and it will sound better. So this is the chart that I'm talking about. And so as an infant, we have to support their heads. They can't hold their head up yet. And they don't smile right away. Everybody says unless they have gas, but they don't start really responding to outside stimulus until they're 2 to 4 months. 6 to 10 months, they can start to sit up without assistance. 1 year, they start walking. 15 months, they start to speak 5 or 6 words. Age 2 to 4, they start to be able to be potty trained and to control their urine and bowels. Age 4, now they can go to the bathroom by themselves. They're progressing. Age 4 or 5, they can put on clothes without help. And they know to adjust the water temperature. They can tell the temperature that they need for a bath. Age 5 to 7, now they can select proper clothing. If it's cold outside, they know to put on a sweatshirt or grab a jacket before they go outside. 8 to 12, they start to learn to figure. They can do finances simply. And 12 plus, hold a job, prepare meals. That 16-year-old can get a driver's license now, and he can head out into the world. And so that is the development side. The regression side, and I'll kind of do it now the same. So at 12, they can reason, hold a job, prepare meals. And at stage 1, there's no difficulty at all. So there's no difficulty at all at stage 1. So what stage are you in right now? Possibly stage 1. Possibly more stages, but age 8 to 12, they can handle simple finance. And at stage 2, in the regression, memory troubles begin to affect job and home. You might be making mistakes in the checkbook, or you're starting to notice there's some difficulty. 2 and 3 are kind of the same. So stage 4 drops down to they're disoriented, no longer can operate a vehicle safely. That's when you kind of just get a little more confused. You're in the grocery store, you can't remember which aisle something is on, you're just a little bit more disoriented. Stage 5, over here, can select proper clothing for an occasion or season. Over here, stage 5 can no longer select proper clothing for occasion or season. Can get dressed without help. Over here, can no longer put clothes on properly. You might have somebody come out with their pajamas over their overcoat. The thinking is now changed. They know to put on clothes, but they don't know how to do it properly. So that's the regression. Can put on clothes without help. When they can't put on clothes properly, they may need help. Adjust the water temperature for bath. No longer can adjust the temperature for the bath. In that stage, sometimes your loved ones might be fearful of the water or taking baths. That could be part of it. They can't tell if it's too hot, and burns can occur, and it just gets, because they don't know, it starts to get confusing and a little bit frightening for them. Stage 6, Here at age 4, they can use the toilet without help, and then here no longer use the toilet without help. They need somebody to be with them, to help them. Stage 6, urinary and bowel incontinence. 7, speech is limited to 6 or so words per day. Can sit up without assistance here, can no longer sit up without assistance. And can smile, cannot smile. Cannot hold up head, or can hold up head, cannot hold up head over here. So it's kind of interesting, the progression and the regression, and how, we do serve a mighty God, and He has created a universe of order, and even in this, it's orderly. And so for us, as we are caring for a loved one, it kind of helps us to understand maybe what's coming. Each person, the progression and the regression is still unique and personal to them. But this is just to kind of put some ideas that we can be thinking about, because as we go along, I'll show you the most difficult stage. So here's our illustration. No difficulty at all. Stage 1. You're curious, capable, learn quickly, retain knowledge, love life, making plans. You have a future goals. Stage 2 to 3, memory trouble begins to affect your job and your home. Stage 4, disoriented, can no longer operate a vehicle safely. So this is a picture of a teenager, but this is not talking about the teenagers, although it kind of correlates. It's talking about this 3 to 4th stage, which I say is the most difficult. And even in raising our children, this maybe was the most difficult stage for us when our children were preteen and teenagers, because they do get rebellious, they do get argumentative, they do use poor judgment, and they sometimes wander. But so will our elderly loved ones. But I say that this is the hardest stage, because if you don't have a diagnosis, then you don't know what's happening. You think that your loved one is just being argumentative for the sake of argumentativeness. They're using poor judgment, but you should know better. Those kinds of things. Quit wandering. Where are you going? Come back. It's time for dinner. Why are you outside? And a loved one is driving, and he calls, if he can, I'm lost. Why are you lost? You've driven that path 100 times. Why are you lost? Do you see what we can do? We can start that. It's just a misunderstanding that we don't know what's happening in our loved one's brain. So this, I think, is the very hardest. And for the loved one, they don't know why they can't remember. I know that I've driven that 100 times. I'm still lost. And then there's also, why are you questioning me? Why am I wandering? It's none of your business. I can do what I want to do. I'm an adult. I can do that. Those are the kinds of arguments that will happen in this stage. So as we go through, remember that little baby. I'll love you forever. Remember that mom with her teenagers. I'm going to love you forever. With your loved one, I'm going to love you forever. But those might be clues as to why those arguments that didn't used to happen are starting to happen. Hardest stage. They know something's going on, they can't stop it, and they will also cover it up. Oh, well, I just made a wrong turn. Maybe I just, they'll start to cover up the things that are happening, and they'll be good at it. They can really be good at, just like teenagers can be sometimes. they'll be able to reason to some degree to cover up that they have forgotten or that they are really struggling. That's where grace comes in. Stage 5. It can no longer select proper clothing for the season, can no longer put on clothes properly, no longer adjust the water temperature, can no longer use the toilet without help, urinary and bowel incontinence, speech limited to 6 or so words per day, can no longer walk without assistance. This is when the behavior of rummaging, we heard that term. It's where they kind of go through drawers, they're looking for something, they can't find something, they start to rummage is kind of a familiar term, hoarding. They start to want to collect things and to put things around them. I say behaviors, and I don't like that word behavior. They can't communicate. They can't tell us what they need or why they need it. So when these behaviors come, look deeper. What's the cause? What's the emotion behind it? What are they trying to tell us? They become fearful and paranoid. Fearful of you leaving them alone. Where are you going? Mommy, don't go. When they're little, no, don't go, don't leave me. Well, it gets to be the same in this stage as well. They get paranoid. Why were you, or why are you checking up on me? What are you, I think somebody's after me. I think that somebody's following me. They'll start to become a little bit more paranoid. And then sundowning is a term that is used to, as the sun starts to go down, agitation starts, and sometimes yelling or wandering. It's just like an uneasiness. And I remember when I had my kids, right before bedtime was the worst time for them. Are they tired? Are they hungry? Right around dinner time it would start, and then it would last until we could get to bed. So similarities there, but sundowning is a real thing, and so there's some ways that you can combat that too, that we'll talk about a little bit later. Your loved one can no longer sit up, can't smile, can't hold up their head. I learned to love the residents so deeply during this stage of their life. Not only them, but also their family, because it's difficult. And yet, I would look at them just like I would a little baby. One of the things that happens as people get older and get closer to these stages, people don't know what to do, they don't know what to say. People start looking away. Very few people will look them in their eyes anymore and really, really speak to them and see them as a person. With infants, you hear about the failure to thrive. When they're left alone, they don't have physical contact, they don't have people speaking to them. It's the same with the elderly when it gets to this point. If you can keep speaking to them, if you can keep touching them, if you can keep looking into their eyes and smiling at them, what do people do with babies? I have a picture of Al coming up that will show you. But they smile and they coo. Now, this is your parent, this is your older loved one. We don't want to use baby talk. We want to treat them with dignity and love and respect that is due them. But to talk to them in a normal tone of voice, to tell them how much you love them, how sweet your day was, talk about other family members, but keep talking to them. Keep looking them in the eyes. And it will prolong their life. It will prolong their quality of life. The more you spend time. Don't think that they are something that can just be put on the shelf or tucked away somewhere. They are precious, 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 precious. God knows the day you're going to be born. He knows the day you're going to die. And until that day, you are precious to Him. You are precious to all the loved ones that you have. don't ever forget that your loved one is precious. So during this last stage, this stage 7, lots of appetite, no more words, sleeps way too much, or sometimes way too little. They can't sleep, the insomnia will kick in. So that chart is for Alzheimer's. Dementia is the big umbrella term. And when I was dealing with this 100+ different people, they all had different types of dementia, some Alzheimer's, some other. And so from this point on, it doesn't matter what type of dementia your loved one has. These things that I'm going to share with you, the P's and Q's, are going to be tools for you to use no matter what type of dementia they have. So dementia is the umbrella. Alzheimer's, Huntington's, which is also Pick's disease, mixed dementia, Parkinson's, vascular dementia, that comes from a stroke or some kind of, you can also have an injury that will cause dementia. Another diagnosis, even MS or there might be a temporary dementia, there might be a more permanent, but frontotemporal dementia. So, but it's not going to matter what type of dementia they have from here on out, it's all going to be helpful. There's two parts of the brain that are important, and this is again back to Alzheimer's more than the other dementias, but the P's and Q's are going to be for all. The hippocampus is, this is a pointer. The hippocampus here is a little piece of the brain, and it's essential for forming new memories, such as what we ate for breakfast, what we ate for lunch, a recent conversation. But the progressive shrinking of the hippocampus is responsible for the short-term memory loss that is hallmark for Alzheimer's. I've already told you. Why are you asking me? Don't you remember? Those are the things that we say to somebody when they're starting to have that short-term memory loss. Grandma, you've already told me that story 100 times, you know? It's good to be reminded. In Alzheimer's disease, there's the hippocampus, but there's also this little thing over here, and it's called the amygdala. And the hippocampus stores the long-term memories. The amygdala stores emotion memories. So what that means is, I might not be able to remember your name, but I remember how you make me feel. And that's important. It's important to us even when we go to the grocery store, when we're driving in Houston traffic. They might not know our name, but they know how we made them feel, either good or bad. Those feeling emotion memories are being stored in the amygdala or being recalled by the amygdala. And so the common emotions that trigger this response usually include fear, anger, anxiety, and aggression. And that's what it's pretty much known for. And it's called, with first responders, it's a flashback. It's where something happens and all of a sudden that emotion, it could be the smell, it could be the sounds, or post-traumatic stress syndrome for people who've come back from the war. All those negative things are there, but then it's also good because it also stores those positive. So it's like when you go into a restaurant and you smell cinnamon rolls that your grandma used to make, and it brings back a flood of good emotions, good feelings. You don't really remember grandma making those, but that smell brought back a sweet, comforting, lovely feeling. But you don't have to, the hippocampus, you can't remember the event, but you can remember the emotion that comes from it. And that can happen through all the different 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, feel, and taste. All of those things can trigger that amygdala to bring back positive emotions or negative, but it's those positive emotions that we're going to try to use to our advantage when we are dealing with our loved ones. So the amygdala is my new best friend. And I didn't know what it was called, but I used it many, many times in the programming at the nursing home. So the P's and Q's that I'm going to give you are tools for our toolbox, because this is a hard thing to cope with. And so the more tools that we have, the better off we will be, because something will work one day and not another. Something will work for me, but not for you. Something will work as caregivers. I might be able to use something, another caregiver may come and not have any success with it at all. It's all so personal, so that's why the more things we can put in our toolbox, the better off it will be.